Hello, welcome everybody. It's episode 161 of Reanimated. My name is Stuart. I'm on California. And on New York is H.A. Conrad. What's up?
I'm definitely on New York. Woot.
Hey, how you doing? We got a lot to cover today. Up to and including the film Pandemic from 20-something. It's like recently, 2015 maybe?
It's 2015-ish.
So yeah, we're going to be talking about that movie, but we have a bucket full of news because there's all kinds of stuff that's been going on, a lot of projects in the works, which always gets us excited. And Elon Musk has just been creating such a ruckus, and we'll get to that. So, but first up in news-wise, we've got some kind of featurettes about the Cured movie with Ellen Page, which now my curiosity's been set to rest that she's not going to be doing an Irish accent. Did you watch some of the footage?
I did. And, it's interesting because even watching this and looking at some of the storyline, I definitely was reminded of In the Flesh in terms of...
100% In the Flesh.
I mean, that's 100%. What it is. I mean,
yeah.
It's definitely a little bit drug addict / I don't know, disease, like all the issues that they were contending with in the Flesh feels like they decided to make this thing out of it, or in slightly darker and less humorous, I would say. Like
it seems to be, yeah, and yeah. There's no "you're so adept, Philip" lines coming out of this one, but instead of like a boy who's come out and dealing with that, it's going to be this guy now living with his sister-in-law. So there's going to also be undoubtedly sexual tension between the two of them, right? I mean, that has to happen.
Yeah, it has to happen. Clearly, that's what happens.
But so, either way, it'll be interesting to see. I'm not sure that I'm going to like it as much as In the Flesh, just because we had, 3 seasons of In the Flesh to really wrap our teeth around. Do you wrap your teeth around things?
I do wrap them around things.
Okay, well, good.
Mainly food things, but,
Exactly. Not so much concepts. Today's going to be a day of me not using words correct. Anything else on The Cured? I'm jazzed.
I'm excited. Soon. I'm excited to see it. We've heard a lot about it. I will say the scenes look great. The few scenes of dialogue and whatever look good. The cast looks excellent. So not much to hate about this at this point. And it's been so hyped up and the reviews were great. So definitely excited to see this, which is coming out February 23rd. Unclear how it's going to be distributed. I know that it is through IFC, I think. But they did say streaming, so I'm hoping that means that maybe Amazon or iTunes or something like that. So we'll keep you posted, but we're definitely going to be reviewing this one. Yep.
All right, coming soon.
Yeah.
Next up, we had a little news break on Instagram. You want to get this one, AJ?
Sure. So there was a little teaser. There was some debate about whether it was valid or not, but Danae Garcia, otherwise known as Luciana from Fear the Walking Dead, looks like she's coming back. So that's pretty exciting news. I really liked her as a character, and I was unhappy about the way they left things with her. So super psyched. Hopefully this is true, and she is coming back. So
yeah, I think it's kind of bizarre the way that they wrote her out of the show last year.
Agreed.
And actually, she pronounces her name Denai.
Denai.
to Denai Guerrera, who is Michonne. There's two women called Denai, although they spell it differently on this on the Walking Dead, which is kind of crazy.
Sorry, folks. Deny then.
No, it's just point of
no,
interest.
No. I you know what? Part of why I just pronounced it that way is because I was thinking of Denai from The Walking Dead, and I just thought there had to be a difference there. But
yeah. And
anyway.
I'm so excited to see Denai Guerrera in Black Panther. Man,
yeah, I'm very excited about that. Me too. So that looks like it's going to be awesome. Although,
go ahead.
Did you see the crazy campaign to try to trash it on Rotten Tomatoes and stuff like that? So hopefully that doesn't happen. But
this movie is so anticipated that I don't think, unless it turns out to be a total dud, and all of the trailers and everything, and the soundtrack, and the fact that Kendrick Lamar is writing original music for it.
I know, it
Unless
looks amazing.
all of that falls apart, I think this movie is going to be an explosion of awesome. That's my
Well,
prediction.
this is a little bit of a DC Marvel battle, I guess. That's part of what was happening there. And then there's clearly some race implications there. So I'm hoping the good guys win, but I think that this is going to totally be, I think it's going to be an amazing film. So very excited about this. Also, something I am very excited about, or at least tickled by, is the next news item, which is some of you may have caught Elon Musk's tweets about flamethrowers, which were just awesome, in my opinion.
Yeah, this was a really bizarre twist in the
strange.
news cycle for me. And the first place I saw this was actually because I follow Chandler Riggs on Twitter, who is Carl from The Walking Dead, or who
Yep.
was. I don't know if we could still talk about him in the first person, or in the present tense, rather.
Yeah.
And he was like, I just bought a flamethrower. I feel conflicted about it. But I was like, what? Why
Yeah.
would you do that, Chandler Riggs? And then I find out, oh yeah, of course, it's Elon Musk. First of all, like, the name of the company is The Boring Company. And then he's like, hey, yeah, everybody buy a flamethrower. This is not a joke. But everything about this felt like a joke.
Right. And it was like, is this just sort of like a silly something or other? Because you can also buy a fire extinguisher along with this. And then his little pithy remarks about zombie apocalypse and all that fun stuff was added in. I just think, like, the sense of humor is great. So, also have to point out, Fortune magazine picked this up pretty
Right.
quick.
Yeah.
So, anyhow.
Well, because he made like $8 million or something? Or was
Yeah,
it
yeah,
more than
yeah.
that?
Yeah, it was something like that because they were charging like they were getting a lot of exposure for them. In addition to Teslas and, Teslas and all that fun stuff, Elon Musk saving the world.
Well, this might be the opposite of saving the world. Selling thousands of flamethrowers to people on the internet might actually be the opposite of doing good work. But,
Agreed,
we'll have to see.
but is it real? I guess that's the question. It doesn't
yeah.
feel real, but I'm hoping that it's a joke. Am I wrong?
Well, no, I think you're wrong. I think it's a real flamethrower.
I know.
Unfortunately.
I'm just trying to be positive.
That's more like ostrich sticking head in sand.
I
than
know.
optimistic.
Well, because okay, the thing is, if I admit that this is true, then I have to think about the people that are actually buying these flamethrowers, and that terrifies me.
Well, it's good, upstanding citizens like Chandler Riggs. Nothing to worry about.
And then there's a question about whether Chandler Riggs is buying it because he's been totally affected by making the show. But
I mean, he's been on a zombie show since he was a preteen.
he can't help but be affected by that, right?
I'm pretty sure he is like a tea bag left in the tea way too long of the zombie tea.
Long. So we'll keep you posted on that and whether he actually is creating zombie hordes in his Gigafactory. But next up in the news, there is a lot of content coming out, Netflix especially, but just in general. So the next couple of news items are a little bit about that. Actually, the next three. So we both saw this trailer, which for a Netflix series coming out in the spring. They've been vague about the release date, but it is called The Rain, and it is a Scandinavian post-apocalyptic Netflix movie. And I'm curious to see, is it a movie or a series?
I think it's a movie.
Well, in any case, it looks pretty good. The trailer looks good.
Nope, sorry, series. You're right,
Okay.
it's a series.
The Scandinavians seem to be really into the zombie genre. I'm not shocked at this. I think it's something to do with the landscape and the idea that there could be, walkers hiding at every turn. It looks like the way that the trailer looks very desaturated. Some good sound effects and music. Some very, very just good-looking Scandinavian people
Yep, a couple of bunker kids coming out of their bunker and
with those
realizing
with those awesome cheekbones. I'm gonna be looking forward to that. So I feel like we're queuing up a long roster of things to review, which is great given the dearth of news in the new year that had up until this point.
yeah, for real. This is like kind of exactly what I was bemoaning, was this lack of zombie news lately, and so now we've just got lots of projects. So looking forward to The Rain, and then Seventh Day is something else entirely. This is out of the UK. It doesn't have any real budget. It's all crowdfunded.
Yep.
And you could watch parts of it, or maybe the precursor to the series they want to make on YouTube,
Right.
called The Seventh Day, and it's What drew my attention to this was in Birmingham, they've been trying to get extras to play zombies in this series, and it is very much like a grassroots effort. It's super low budget. The acting is, I would say, uneven.
Yeah.
But the editing and the vision, I think, are pretty strong based on what I saw.
They're pretty strong, and this is something you and I have talked about before, just in terms of the ability to make things and the access to like much less expensive filmmaking. Like you're just with the way that content can be released these days, and the way productions can be made, like you can do things a lot less expensively. But also, I do think that the audience, in terms of what they'll tolerate and what they like, you can do something like this where maybe you don't have a ton of money and you can release things in a serial sort of way. So there's a 40-minute sort of hashed together little mini movie, but I guess it was originally released in 10-minute increments, and it reminded me a little bit of how The Martian was released, obviously in a book form, but released as a serial in that way, and then ultimately made its way to fame and fortune in a feature film later on. And a lot of that was just this guy putting this thing out because he liked it. There was like the audience just grew and grew, and maybe that will happen with this. But I agree that the acting is a little uneven, because my guess is that they're probably working with some of their friends, and I don't think that they're paying standard union rates for this kind of production. But it's also, what I think is great about it is the creativity and imagination that you have to be able to edit something together. And the editing on this,
and the staying power, man. Like just having the idea isn't enough. This is hundreds of hours these guys are putting into this.
Oh, definitely.
But you have to appreciate from an amateur project.
I definitely appreciate it, and I also think that as you pointed out, the editing is great, and so whoever's doing that is doing a fantastic job. And I do think that there's a nice little sense of humor. I do think that they could work a little bit with the scripts, and it is tough because you are kind of tied to the talent that you're able to grab for this. So, but I would definitely continue to watch this. I like these kinds of projects, and they're passion projects, and people, like, there is a little bit of a cheesiness that is good for this kind of thing. And that's also why the zombie genre, like, you see so many of these kinds of projects related to that. But go for it, Seventh Day. I really, and I don't know if you caught some of the people who are behind this. Some of their interviews are kind of like really cute, so trying to get people to join in and things like that. So I think regardless of what happens with it, they're definitely having a lot of fun doing it. So
yeah, so keep an eye out for more Seventh Day. The name of the film company is Envigor, and they have their own channel on YouTube where you can catch a lot of that stuff. And then coming up is another Netflix project, or something that Netflix, I guess, decided to come in and finance. And it's led to some controversy in Canada.
Of course it did. Because it's Québécois.
It's a Québécois film. It's in French. It'll be released with multiple language options on Netflix. But if you try and watch the trailer now on YouTube, it's all in, shall we say, challenging dialect French.
Yes, Québécois. You shouldn't. The Québécois will get very upset with you saying that, Stuart.
Well, okay, it's only challenging for idiots like me who need subtitles, and there are none available. But you don't really need to know what they're saying to understand that they're in a bit of a pickle.
Yes, no, and this is something that happens a lot. So the whole thing with the French language. And Québécois specifically, is that they want to preserve their culture. So they run into a lot of issues, like anything that is non-Québécois, French, so to speak. They challenge it. My guess is that's why there are not subtitles here. It's also archaic French, so it's not, there may not be a readily available, like, they probably have to create a new subtitle track or something for it.
The movie is called Les Affamés, which I think means the starving or the hungry.
The hungry or something like that. In any case, it does look good. I don't think you necessarily need to understand what they're saying to understand the plot, like a lot of zombie films. But it does look interesting to me. I think it's very cool because this actually got a lot of rave reviews at the Toronto Film Festival last year, I think. So I would definitely look at this as long as there is a soundtrack. I no longer really speak French. I can understand understand Quebecois, like probably 2/3 of it.
I got maybe one word per sentence in that trailer.
Yeah, I mean,
rough.
it's just a different cadence, and it's just a very, very different accent. So, and different, just totally different. But definitely looking forward to seeing what comes of that, and also the fact that they're producing more things in Quebec, I think, is great. So, let's see what happens with that. And then lastly, just a silly little weird news item, just because I saw it and I thought of you, Stuart, was this last item about the woman on the airplane that charged the cockpit and then bit a flight attendant. And my immediate reaction was that, there goes the zombie apocalypse. Probably
Thank
not.
goodness she waited till after they had landed to do that.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with her, but definitely something was up. And she didn't make her way into the cockpit. They eventually subdued her and used the handy dandy, like all-purpose tool, duct tape, in order to eventually calm her or at least restrain her. Now we are on to our review, which is Pandemic. This I had not actually heard about when it was actually released. Had you seen this or thought about it?
No, this is the first time I've seen it. I feel like you told me before that you've watched it before.
I had watched maybe a piece of it before, but it was definitely on Netflix. It was certainly not when this was first released. So I had to remind myself of what it was. And then I was like, oh, this one. So it is really, I mean, and I think this was deliberate, but the feel of this film is definitely like a first-person shooting video game, but kind of watching them go through it.
There's one scene specifically that reminded me of like Halo, where they're putting her suit on and testing her suit capabilities. I'm like, dude, this is 100% a video game right here.
Yeah.
My first impression when the film started was that it seemed like a vlog almost.
Yeah.
Because we have a few shots of this blonde woman getting ready for her day, I guess, in the zombie apocalypse. And it consists of a lot of her looking at her phone. And there's some interesting like perspective in the way they shoot it, where she's like swiping her hand across our faces as we're watching, as she's watching videos and stuff on her phone of her husband and daughter. But a lot of it feels, it's kind of a weird vibe. And then it quickly gets into the story after just a couple of scenes showing that she has a family, basically.
Right. And it's your typical setup. I mean, zombie apocalypse happened. She's separated from her family. She is supposedly a doctor. And there's we get a very quick rundown as she's walking, as she's going on her quote unquote mission. So the whole thing that you pointed out, her getting into her suit, kind of running through with this military. Is he a sergeant? What is he? I don't know.
The head doctor?
Is he the head doctor?
Wait, the guy who's giving her the tour and everything?
Yeah, Brass from
Dr. Greer.
Oh, Dr. Greer, sorry. So he is it's interesting because he's actually one of the few people that I recognize as an actor in this. Although
really? The whole crew.
I recognized you know what I mean. Like when I recognize a couple of people, but like he's the one that I know probably best. So he plays Brass on CSI Vegas.
Okay.
That's how I know him. But it basically gives you the whole setup. They've been overrun. Somehow she got there from New York, and keeps talking about how New York is whatever. She does seem a little bit unsure of herself, and this particular theme is what they build upon in the storyline.
Rachel Nichols. Rachel Nichols is the name of the lead.
Right, and she's Dr. Lauren Chase.
Dr. Lauren Chase, in quotes. The dude you're talking about is Paul Guilfoyle, and I feel like we've talked about him before on this podcast, because he's been in everything, like all the CSIs, as you said. But I feel like he must have been in another zombie something, because we have definitely talked about this guy before.
Yeah, definitely. And I will point out that, yes, there is somebody else, but I was saving this one. Alfie Allen is in this from Game of Thrones, obviously, but because he's all suited up and whatever, I did not immediately recognize him.
Oh, I had him pegged right away.
Really?
I recognize this guy. It was a real shame that he gets to say "you've got red on you," but he says it in like his American accent instead of in an English accent. I was wondering how much of an homage that was. I assume it was like 100%.
Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah, 100% conscious Shaun of the Dead reference.
Oh, definitely.
Other cool cast people who are in this are Missy Pyle, who's best known maybe for Galaxy Quest.
Yeah.
In my mind, anyway, she was one of the aliens in Galaxy Quest and has a very recognizable face. And then Mekhi Phifer, I'm not sure if that's how you say his name, but he was doing a lot of stuff like in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then I haven't seen him so much. And I feel like his role in this is kind of played up in the cover art because I feel like that's him.
Yeah, it's definitely
with the axe and the machine guns walking away from the camera, and you're like, yeah, Mekhi Phifer, he's gonna be a boss in this. And, and then, you know, spoiler alert, he's the first one to go, basically.
Yep.
It's kind of weird.
Yep. But and as you go in and slowly recognize, or at least for me, slowly recognize people when they took off their hoods or whatever. It is an interesting, like, they did get a great cast together for this, but the choice to film it the way that they did, which is basically like from the point of view, you don't actually see a ton of the doctor because a lot of it's from her camera or from different cameras on the people's suits. So that's how it has that first person shooter kind of feel.
Yeah.
And the good thing about that, or at least from the interesting thing about it from this kind of a film, is that it is stressful to watch because you're watching, it feels like you're watching things in the first person, and you're kind of limited in terms of your field of view, so things can, you know, they can get those jump scares in there really easily. They overuse it just a little bit. So
and eventually it definitely gets into quarantine wreck territory.
Yeah, definitely. So
one sequence especially.
So admittedly, I did, like, for a little bit of this, I was getting a little bit motion sick.
Really?
Had some motion sickness going on. I had to actually pause and watch different pieces. I had to break it up. I just couldn't watch it all together. Though I think if I had been watching it on like a bigger screen, that wouldn't have felt as much. It was because I was watching on my little laptop, or, you know, so that made me feel a little bit more claustrophobic. But one of the things that I noticed on in a negative way was that some of the editing was like, some of the timing just felt off to me. I don't know if you felt that way too. It was almost like, wait for it, then jump scare. Or wait for it, then car hits a person.
Yeah, some of those were just super predictable.
Right. But there were some super successful pieces of this, specifically related to the character, the Galaxy Quest woman. That whole thing.
Her name was Denise.
Denise.
So some of the other interesting scenes that happen early on in this film are, to me anyway, like the establishment of, we've got this compound, and it's kind of hilarious the way that Greer does the exposition at the beginning. Is like, all right, we've got 5 different categories of zombie, goes from flu to hemorrhage to hibernation to level 5. And then he's like, you know, don't bring back any infected or the whole base will collapse. New York has already gone down, we find out, and Dr. Chase has just come in from New York. So she's like the new guy on the team. It reminded me of the movie Fury with Brad Pitt. Yep. She joins this really salty crew of dudes, and Denise, who's nice. But I rewatched Fury recently for some reason because I was like, oh, that movie didn't depress me the first time enough, so let's watch Fury again. Nope, I shouldn't have done that because that is really just a very depressing World War II movie. The exit from the compound is one of the most confusing things to me.
Yeah, it really was, because it didn't make sense to me.
It makes even less sense if you watch the film all the way to the end and you're like, wait, where's that same exit point? Why did they come in a different place from where they left? But yeah, like their method for getting teams out of the base
don't make sense at all.
It's like, all right, we're gonna have 4 soldiers. We're gonna open some gates into a tunnel and drive a bus into it while these 4 soldiers just shoot machine guns at hundreds of zombies that are running at them. and from like 5 feet away. There's
Right.
no way that this would work in
No,
real
and
life.
also you're in an enclosed thing, the bus or whatever it is. Why on earth would you let yourself become vulnerable? Like your best bet, you can get through it through this horde. Like, have you ever heard of cracking a window and shooting at them, or like, not becoming exposed? Because the other part of this whole thing, and this is something that Dr. Greer expresses to her, is that basically, if she gets infected, they are going to do everything they can. They do have these antivirals that they can cure her if it's in the first stage. All the people on her team do not have that luxury because they are considered expendable. The only reason why they would do this with her is because she's a doctor. So if you have that as a premise, there's the vulnerability of this team. I just don't think that they would be. This makes no tactical sense whatsoever to try to get out this way. So,
Yeah.
and I also don't think that they would be putting themselves at risk in this way. It just, I know that part of their willingness to go out and to do these rescue missions is because they actually don't get food on the base. They're not in like the higher echelon of valuable citizens. So in some ways, this allows them to go out and forage and things like that. So that makes sense. But if you know that your only way of getting back on the base is not being infected and completing the mission that you said you were going to go out for, like, I just don't think you open yourself up to infection like they are. So, and it's like crazy because they get totally bombarded with these infected people. So like it's a little bit artificial from a movie making point of view, and to me a little bit sloppy. So that's one gripe. I do think that the driving around, sort of the whole kind of post infected LA area is interesting.
Yeah, there's one really weird scene
Yeah.
where they're showing footage of just like a homeless encampment, I'm pretty sure, in actual LA.
Yeah, it's
Like
kinda
those aren't
weird.
actors.
No, and it's a little creepy.
I was like, what? Those people
Yeah.
don't look sick and they don't look like zombies. Nobody's attacking them. Oh, that's because they're just normal people who are like extremely poor in actual Los Angeles in 2014 or whenever they were shooting this.
Yeah, I had the same thought, and I was like, "Oh, that's rough, and that's terrible and exploitative, so not cool."
Yeah,
So,
that was the one part where I was like, that is absolutely not okay.
nope.
But otherwise, yeah, the CGI was a little rough, but they kept part of the way that they make this work is with the limited view that these helmet cams have. They could keep the edits pretty tight and keep the view narrow, so they wouldn't have to do too much CGI with the city as at large. It was also interesting in the overall editing of this film, that they would sometimes bounce from helmet cams to like interior security cameras.
Yep.
It's almost like somebody else on the base later edited all this together from like found
Right.
footage that was everywhere, which
Right.
was so that also gives you occasionally like a larger view, but for the most part you are just stuck between these four people and what they're looking at.
Right.
The reason they're going out too is to because they've got this message from another team who found like 90 uninfected civilians at a school, and they were going to bring there was a bus full of them coming back, and then they lost contact, and then there's like 50 something more of them at this school, and you're just like, yeah, right, there are. No way.
Yeah, and that's the other piece. It's like, okay, so would they risk their one doctor that they still have, or like whatever, it's Dr. Greer who's in charge and like her, and would they risk sending that out? Probably not.
We don't really know how many teams there are, I guess.
I guess, but okay, so here's the thing that just kept bothering me about that scenario. Maybe it's because they think that they can't trust these teams. I don't know, but if the only thing that you're doing is testing people with this little mosquito
Pistol.
thing, which
Yeah.
is like this little, like, there doesn't seem to really be any technical prowess that you need to actually operate this and to test, because you know whether somebody's infected or not, whether the dot is red or whether the dot is black. So, you know, if you're going to do that, you're going to send out people that aren't as valuable in order to test them. or to bring them back and put them in a quarantine area and test them. But you're not going to send out like high value members of your team who might be able to find a cure for this thing. So that bothered me a lot. And also the way this team went out, supposedly this team knows what they're doing. This team is, other than the doctor, this team is very well versed in what's going on out there and how to deal with things. They keep talking to her about, oh, have you ever seen a level 5? And she's like, oh, just now as we went through this door, like this was the first time she'd really encountered the progression of the infection. And they are basically schooling her on what she needs to do or what they need to do to survive. And she keeps getting yelled at by everybody, but primarily by Gunnar. Just talking about how she needs to take care of herself and take care of the team, and she's putting the team at risk and all of this stuff. And so they're talking about how well versed they are, but then they make incredibly stupid decisions, and
Yes.
just about at every turn. So it's just not plausible to me. And you do need some of this to build drama, but I just feel like this is one of those places where if things had been a little tighter and a little bit more creative in terms of the script writing and the editing, you could have gotten there without making the team look like idiots. I don't know. Like it just seemed kind of strange to me. Did you have that feeling too?
Absolutely. I was like, are these guys, I can't tell if these guys are veterans or just complete idiots. And one of the other interesting things about the makeup of the team is Wheeler and Gunnar both seem to be extremely well versed, and they have a lot of tools in their toolkits for the jobs they have. Gunnar and Wheeler, they're very apt names, right? But so Wheeler is the ex-con who is the only one who knows how to drive the bus, apparently, because I don't know, are school buses hard to drive? Maybe they are.
I don't know.
And the other thing he can do is hotwire anything, because he's a criminal, and all criminals know how to hotwire things, right? And then Gunnar is just like a fighting machine and can use multiple guns. In fact, there's a scene where he's wandering around with like a shotgun and a machine gun at one point, or an assault rifle. I'm like, you don't need 2 of those. Give one of those to somebody else.
Right.
But then there's Denise, whose only role is navigator, is to read a GPS. I'm like,
why do you need her?
I mean, we need a fourth person's perspective, and it's nice to have another lady on the team, but come on. What is her job here exactly?
Right, they could have at least had her have some rudimentary medical knowledge or something, but they didn't, and that was kind of weird.
She was just there to be like the shoulder to cry on for Dr. Chase.
Right, and to have some sympathy because she had lost her son to leukemia, and she was the somewhat sympathetic member of the team, of the old guard team. You know, in terms of the issues I had with some of these storylines, this team that's so well versed, they're going out and it's weird. They make arbitrary decisions about when to stop and test people or when not to. It's always like, let's move along. Oh, no. And then they fight about that. And then they suddenly like, no, we're going to stop now. Specifically, I'm talking about the scene where there is that woman in the middle of the street and they go out and they're like, they want to test her, and she's clearly bait put there by the other infected. I do like that idea. I just don't like their reasoning for stopping, which seems to be nothing. You know, like there doesn't seem to be a reason why they would actually stop for this one as opposed to another one. And, you know, she's basically chained to a sewer grate. And they've used her as bait, maybe to get supplies, maybe to do something else. But this team, I think, would have seen all the tricks at this point.
You'd think. Yeah.
So that bothered me a bit, though I did like the idea of this scene, and this is kind of what I'm talking about. Like, the idea with the premise was great, but come up with a better script in order to explain why they stopped and actually like looked at her. And the other part of the reasoning for this scene is to basically show that Dr. Lauren Chase just does not seem to be comfortable in the field at all, which is weird considering she just came from New York, which fell and was like a hotbed of infection. And if she was actually a member of the CDC, she would have seen all this. She would be okay with like, and just much more adept at using the tools that she's has at her disposal. And she doesn't seem that way. So that is a tip-off to a later plot line. Then, you know, in terms of the other times that they explore things, even like Gunnar, who is supposed to be the most adept in terms of, and most skeptical in terms of these infected people, and he's the most, like, I don't want to say cold, but, you know, he's basically like, this is what you have to do to survive, kind of a mentality and trying to push that on Dr. Chase. You know, we do find out that the team that didn't come back, the team that they lost contact with, his wife was actually in that particular team. And they use that as a way to get them out of the bus again, but I just don't feel like he would have done what he did in the way that he did it. Right?
It's just so weird that this team of 4 only has one person with a weapon.
Right.
And why he would go into the other bus that they find just by himself. And when we also know that there's a hibernation phase of the zombie virus, any of these people that we find like lying in the street or sitting in a seat on a bus, it's like any of these people could open their eyes at any time. And that, I guess, honestly, just created like a really delicious sort of tension for me for the whole movie, where I was like, any person we see with their eyes closed that we know is infected, I was waiting for them to get up.
Right.
But I don't know if that really happened that often. They didn't use that too much.
It didn't happen that often, and I thought they were going to do that with his wife, but they didn't, because what they did show with his wife, spoiler alert, she's dead. Basically what they're showing is that she got eaten in the guts kind of eaten way, and this is something new, I guess, that they didn't know about, which seems implausible to me, but okay. It seems implausible only because we just saw at the base what people in the furthest, like who are farther along in the infection, are willing to do, and they definitely are not just like attacking people. They're like cannibalistic. You know, I thought they were going to do that with her. They didn't. They just had that be the plot point where they figure out that they're eating other people at this point. But even just how, not only how he is exploring this bus in a super unsafe and creepy way, how the rest of the team is waiting. They're waiting with a freaking door open.
Yeah.
Why
and
would
she
you
has
do
her back
that?
to the door,
Yeah.
and she's sticking her head out the door, and yeah, man, I was yelling at my
Me too.
yelling at my TV. Don't poke your damn fool head out is what I write in all caps in my notes. And then, yeah, she gets grabbed out. And then they arrive at the school where they supposedly are going to find the rest of the survivors. So they found several dead people on the bus, which was like the 40, whatever's some number of people. I think it was supposed to be 40 people. And that's a short bus that they were on. So there's no way you can get 40 people on a short bus.
Nope.
However, they get to the school, and I'm like, right away, you're like, nope, this is not a place where there are 50 humans, because it is dark and silent.
Yep.
But they're also motivated by the fact that there's supposed to be a food drop here. So that kind of explains why they wouldn't have just turned around and been like, nope, this didn't pan out, guys. We're going to head back.
Right. And again, it's the main team, not her, that is concerned about the food, because they don't get any unless they find it out there and forage. So that's important to them. So that was fine. But their way of exploring the school was super strange. And again, like when they come upon people that are in the earlier stages of infection, they are just not properly, I mean, she especially is not properly like skeptical or worried. And, you know, when they come upon the woman that's like cradling her child, it's clearly dead. I mean, like you don't need her to put it down to understand that it's dead. And it's
that's because
like,
that's a zombie movie trope. We know that.
I know, but still, the woman's like, I don't know. It's just it's stressful thing to watch and annoying to watch, and they spent way too much time on it. One thing I will say is that the effects of them killing the zombies, they definitely were having a lot of fun with that. They were basically taking every single like video game point of view zombie kill trope and putting it to work in this film.
They also have this insane security cam locker room parkour zombie fight in this part of the film.
That's
which
what
I
I'm
think is
talking
supposed
about.
to be Alfie Allen too.
Yeah.
He's just jumping up and down over these lockers. I'm like, when did he become a parkour guy? That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, every single trope that you've got, and you're watching these people leaping around and, you know, impaling in the head and like just all of that kind of thing. They use it. They use it to the max, and I think that that's pretty cool.
And we've also had Dr. Chase going around calling her daughter on both the sat phone from the bus, and then she finds a cell phone in some dead guy's pants, constantly dialing the same number, which always just goes to voicemail.
I would like to also point out that the guy that she found in the bathroom that she steals his cell phone, His
Yeah.
Argyle shirt is distracting.
Well, that's probably how he got killed in the first place.
That might be. Just this is
Yeah.
the thing about that though, is that okay, so you're an infected land and she finally gets a hold of her daughter. Her daughter does not sound good.
Well,
And
she also hangs up the phone on her mid-conversation. You're like, that's definitely not a good sign.
right. So I don't know. It's just a very strange. I mean, I guess you do want to find out what would happen. I tried to put myself in her situation, and yeah, I mean, I guess you're gonna have to like see it to believe it, basically, and also maybe you don't want to have your loved one living like that. So I understand that.
It's definitely different. What I thought was interesting about this scene was up to the point where she goes into the bathroom and finds the dead guy and takes his cell phone. They haven't seen any evidence of any people in the school.
Right.
Then she finds a dead guy in a who's clearly been like zombie dead or maybe hibernating,
Yeah, he's probably hibernating.
and she doesn't mention it to anybody.
Nope.
Like Denise comes into the bathroom right after she gets off the phone. Is like, hey, we found something, which I guess they found the food, but she doesn't mention it to Gunnar or Wheeler. Like, hey, there's a dead guy in the bathroom. If this was like a place of safety for humans, I'm pretty sure that they've all been killed or whatever.
Yep. Nope.
So-
She says no word.
It's quite frustrating. And then also there's a lot of humming. That's when the humming happens. And then, they find the lady and then they find the gym. And then what is it? Is it all children? No, it's not all children who come
Not
after him,
all,
but there's,
but
quite
there's a lot.
quite a few children. Yeah,
There's a
it's
lot.
kind of disturbing number of children who start running at them, and you're like, oh, okay, let's get out of here.
Yep.
And then we have an exit scene for Gunnar, where I mean he does go out like a boss, but we're still in like early Act 2, if that, of the
Yep.
film. It's it's a bit different. That I mean, it's also like completely expected the entropy that the most capable fighter will get taken out early on.
Well, yeah, because it's also that like we have to see what happens with the doctor and the other folks
Yeah.
without having this gun. And
Yeah.
since they've been so clear in showing that the rest of them don't really have this skill set, other than maybe Wheeler, not quite the same skill set, but at least he can fight. It's really interesting because it's like, okay, now what happens?
I feel like Denise held her own in the bus early on in the bus fight.
She
She did okay.
but then she doesn't at all after this, and hence
Yeah.
the next strange twist in the story, which I referred to a little bit earlier. But Gunnar's taken out, and then there's like
Wheeler runs away.
yep, and then it's her and Denise just kind of hanging out in the sort of desolate area, and they have to figure
Yeah.
out what they're gonna do because the lights are going down.
Yeah, now it feels like a scene from The Crazies,
Yeah, yeah.
the modern version of that film that we watched and reviewed. I don't know,
A while ago.
few hundred episodes ago. Yeah, because they're like trying to creep around and avoid these infected people who are still acting and talking like humans, except that they're going to attack and kill you and eat you
Right.
if they get you. They do some annoying stuff, like they hear a car coming and they decide to run across the street as it comes and hide in a van. Somehow that
Yeah.
works. I don't really understand it. They do a couple of annoying things, and then we get into that scene from Wreck,
Yep.
where they go to night vision and there's a level 5 and et cetera, and Wheeler magically reappears.
Yep.
He actually has a pretty decent backstory as to like how he found them and where he was.
Yeah, no, that was pretty good.
It was good.
But also, we should mention that Denise and Lauren have had a little bit of a bonding moment, enough so that Lauren confesses that she's not actually a doctor.
And her name isn't Lauren.
And it isn't Lauren, it's Rebecca. And her whole purpose, she basically stole the sort of somewhat damaged ID photo of the real Lauren Chase and in New York, and has made her way back here to try to find her daughter, and has basically been faking being a doctor. And Wheeler is not yet in on this secret when he finds them.
I much more enjoy this dynamic between Denise and Wheeler and Lauren/Rebecca than I did at the beginning of the film. I mean, mostly because it's less combative, it's less
Yeah.
antagonistic. They suddenly become a team, and suddenly we like Wheeler, although we're also kind of skeezed out by him because when he does come back, he saves their lives, and then he's like, "I'm not going to die a virgin." I'm like, "What?"
Ew, I know, right? It's creepy.
I thought that was weird, but still, like they have more chemistry as a trio than they did as part of the quartet before.
Agreed. And maybe by taking out, I mean, and maybe that was part of the dynamic, just having that extra person. The trio just has a little bit more energy, and the dialogue is actually a lot more interesting between the three of them without having this sort of artificial antagonistic quality to their interactions. And also,
most of which was coming from Wheeler, right? He was just a total dick.
Right.
But now he's like, hey, I'm cool now. I like you guys, and you like me. We're gonna be friends.
Yep. However, there's a bit of a problem because Wheeler has been injured, and so is likely infected. And Lauren/Rebecca basically is making him promises to get back into the compound that she knows are not, but she still wants to get her daughter. So there's that.
Man, I was convinced that there was no compound anymore at this point in the film, frankly.
Yeah, and the thing is that then these they're slowly picking off the characters, and then I don't like how they pick off the Denise character because this is what I'm talking about. This is like, she drops her son's photo in the street and then very slowly picks it up and just stands in the middle of the street like a weirdo, and then very slowly a car comes up and hits her very slowly.
And the people in that car are not like, they're like 3 or 4 elderly people who are zombies who decide then to slowly eat her.
But it's so slow. It's like Wheeler and Lauren/Rebecca could have helped her, and they just sit there and they even very slowly get out of the car. And they could have been they had gun. I know they didn't have that much ammo left, but I definitely felt like they could have overpowered these people, because guess what? Then they follow them somehow and overpower them while they're in the middle of eating Denise.
After they've driven away, yeah.
Which is how did they get to her so fast? The part of this I did like is I thought this was a great idea, but this whole execution of it was super sloppy and stupid. But the idea of basically her her camera gets to see herself being eaten, which is creepy. Mm-hmm. But good idea, I guess.
Perfect execution, except terrible.
Yeah.
So then we're down to Alfie Allen and Dr. Chase, who's also Rebecca, but then is like, just call me Dr. Chase, or I forget. For some reason, we're still calling her Dr. Chase, feel like by the end of the film.
Yep.
They decide to drive out to Sherman Oaks, to the suburbs, which is apparently where all the level 5s hang out, and to save her daughter. And now Alfie Allen is just a super cool dude now.
Because he's excited.
Really nice.
And he's excited that she's conning everybody too. And he calls her out on it. Right. And that's suddenly they're bonding because she's a con and he's a con. So it's all happy. And he's all into the fact that she's he's like, you're just a mama protecting her cubs. Very Quentin Tarantino kind of a sentiment. So, very Kill Bill.
I've also had that scene here where he realizes she's a con because they've run into Dr. Ward from Group 313. And he's like, I knew Lauren Chase. I'm like, how the hell do you run into someone you thought who knew you, or the person you're faking, who lived in New York in the post-apocalypse?
Because he was also CDC, so maybe they worked together. Sure. And she and Dr. Lauren Chase had been sent to New York, I guess, to help handle things. So
still, I thought it was a bit convenient that she runs into this guy. Although, yeah, you're right. They're technically from the same circles.
Right. So they end up at her house. Her daughter is not looking good.
No, everything about this feels like it's going to go terribly. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really want to talk about this part of the film. They get her daughter out of there. Level 5s show up, but they manage to get away from them.
But her husband is dead. That's also the other part.
He's dead and in the trunk. And that whole scene, I was like, he's going to wake up and attack her.
Me
but
too.
It doesn't happen.
He doesn't.
Alfie Allen breaks his legs jumping out of a window, and
that was rough.
That's the end of him. Yep. And then she puts her daughter in her suit, and they drive back to the base, basically. And this part I don't understand either, because they get back to the base through a different gate, which I already mentioned. I don't know why that happens. But then, the way that it all ends is actually pretty good, I guess. The fact that she's trying to get her daughter in through the gate, but the soldiers are just shooting everything, including the fake Dr. Lauren Chase.
Right. But I guess my question for this is that, so she goes through all of this. She's banking on the fact that she's going to get her daughter cured because of mistaken identity. The problem with this whole plan is that she knows how they treat people that don't have value on that base.
Right.
Once they so once they realize she's not actually a doctor, and once they take her out the suit, aren't they going to recognize that it's not her? I mean, Dr. Greer's there, but maybe like he says take her to an area, so maybe he's not going to see her immediately, and he's the only one who's really seen, Lauren/Rebecca. But once
it's a glimmer of hope. It's more than everybody else on Team 314 has at this point.
True. And she sacrifices herself, but I just kind of feel like once they realize what she is or who she is, that's not a good scenario either for her, for the daughter, for Megan.
You get the impression that they're about to evacuate this base, and so maybe in the chaos she'll be able to
do all right.
Who knows? Yeah, there's not much hope for any of them, as we know in every zombie scenario. It's like, okay, you guys are probably all gonna be dead in a week, but for now, Megan might get to be cured.
So overall, I mean, I thought that this was kind of fun to watch. It's definitely better than some things we have seen. Obviously, we both had some issues with a few of the points, specifically the script, but I definitely think there were a lot of successful parts of this, and an interesting idea. I just my only wish is that the script had been a little tighter, and they had spent some more time making specifically Gunnar a little bit less two-dimensional, and the dynamics a little bit more natural. So that's my big takeaway from this.
I wouldn't have minded if Gunnar had lived a little longer but been a little bit less of a dick. It would have been nice. Or maybe he was a bit of a coward at times or something. There's something that would still allow for the character arcs that Alfie Allen's character has and that Dr. Chase has. Denise kind of stays one way. Mm-hmm. She reveals more about her backstory, but she doesn't really change very much. And so I don't know. She lasted a long time. She kind of served a purpose, but it was time for her to go when it was time for her to go.
Yeah.
But either way, yeah, it was pretty fun. I am glad that I've seen it. I probably will not run out and see it again, given the chance. But
yeah, agreed. I don't think I need to watch it again because I already saw. I you know what? I realized as I was watching it the second time that. That I think I had gotten the motion sickness feeling, and I don't know that I had ever fully finished it. So, but it was enjoyable, and it's good if you're into this kind of thing. It's kind of a fun thing. I wouldn't, I just add it to your queue. It's entertaining.
Of course, now that we've spoiled the entire thing,
zombie fans are not bothered by this. Come on.
Maybe Dr. Lauren Chase makes it in the end.
Maybe.
We find out that she's actually been dead since before the beginning of the film.
Yeah. But anyway, there it is. Pandemic. Yet another zombie Q film brought to you by Netflix at this point in time. Not really, but just they make these recommendations, and this was definitely one of the ones that just kept popping up on mine.
They're feeding our appetite here on Reanimated.
So to speak, yes. But next time, what would you like to talk about?
Well, speaking of Netflix, there's another film on Netflix right now that we did hear about a little bit a few years ago. And it's called Contracted. And it's kind of about some modern themes such as date rape and sexually transmitted diseases and zombies. So I think that's going to be pretty interesting for us to dig into.
And lighthearted.
Oh, yeah. Super, super light.
Well, great. I look forward to talking about that with you next time. In the meantime, if our Reanimated listeners would like to leave a note about Pandemic or other things that we've talked about, the many, many news items, feel free to visit our site, reanimatedpodcast.com, or send us an email at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. Or tweet at us. ReanimatedPcast is the handle. And until next time, ciao.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening.